All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to paint persimmons, and I have 3 examples of the non-astringent persimmon. They have others that you can't eat right away. They have to be ripe, but these you can eat when they're not ripe and when they're very ripe. But if you've never seen a persimmon before, this looks kind of like a tomato, right? And it's got green leaves on the top, and these have dried out a bit, and so they've turned kind of a grayish green. But when they're fresh, they're bright green, and they look similar to these artificial leaves here. Okay. And I have 3 different sizes, and so that you could position just 3 into a nice composition. Here's what my composition was. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. So on the left are the persimmons, right? And it's just basically an enso circle, a round circle, but because it's tomato shape, it's wider longer from east to west. So we would kind of paint an oval, and we're going to leave some space for the leaves. Right, so I'm going to take my, I'm going to show you, as I said, on 2 different kinds of paper. I'm using first my inexpensive Daiso $62 a package, tan colored paper, and I'm going to use inexpensive watercolors, 2 Daiso watercolors, and so you can make the comparison. So I'm taking the yellow ochre, which is here, and I'm using my mini flow brush from OAS, loading it up. And once I get the yellow ochre on, then at the tip, I'm going to take some orange. Getting rid of any extra water. Mini flow brush doesn't have a whole lot of bristles because it's small, so it can get dry here at the heel. So I want to be careful about that. And then I have an orange red here. Okay, and I'm going to take my mixing plate and go back and forth with it, and then contest it. This is my demo paper, so I'm not so worried about whether or not I have more extra marks. All right, so I'm going to test it. Good. And I'm going to hold my brush more slanted than straight up and down. And I think I want to get a little bit more deeper color here. Now, if I wanted more color here on the heel, I could take another brush and load that with some color. Say if I decided, oh, I want more yellow, I can take that yellow with my second brush and paint right over it to get more color, but I'm fine with that. All right. So as I said, we're going to paint this, and it's going to be like an oval. So I start, press. I'm going to turn my brush so that my heel is going to be away and the darker tones are going to be on the outside. So start here, press, pointing one direction, turn your brush, lead with your tip, twisting around. Like that, okay. I'm going to leave that empty space there. I'm going to let that dry a little bit before we put our leaves. Okay. I'll load my brush again. do another one, slightly different tones. And this time we're going to start the opposite direction for people who prefer to go anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay, straight up and down a little bit. Turn your brush so that now your tip is leading. Press your tip all the way around, keeping that broad shape. Twist and come up. Okay, good. Now I think that's probably dried sufficiently. I'm going to switch brushes. You can use the same brush if you want, but because I'm demoing and for sake of time, I'm going to switch brushes. Okay, so I'm going to dip my brush into a little bit of green here, and then darker green. And I might even put a little bit of brown in that or a little bit of ink because my leaves are dried, right? And this persimmon has just a little stump here. It's not a stem. It might have had a stem a while back, but there's not much of a stem on this one. There's a little bit on this one here. See that? Okay. But we're going to not emphasize that too much. So for each leaf, it's just going to be a press and pull, press, and you want to get a lot of those bristles down, lift like that so that it's from wide to thin, like that. Okay, I'm going to load up again. So put a dot here where I think the middle would be. This is using a little bit of perspective. We're not looking straight on it, right? And press and pull, press. We don't see that whole leaf. Press and pull here. And then, okay. And it's okay if we go into the orange part and it starts to blend. That's perfectly fine. And this one, so we want the center to be there. Press and pull, press and pull, press and pull, press and pull. And there's your persimmon. If you want the white spots to be covered up, you can go back in with your orange and just come in little dabs here. And we want to give it a little bit more bulk. We can do a little stroke here to broaden that. A little stroke here to broaden that. And that's the two with inexpensive paper. I'm going to switch to better paper and use all OAS products. Pause for a moment. Okay, so now I have better paper here. OAS paper that's less absorbent, and I'm using companion colors. This is my small companion palette, and this is my larger companion palette. I still have the 3 persimmons, and clean my brush. I dried my brush, and I'm going to show you on the paper the difference. Okay, so I'm going to take a light color yellow and my larger palette here. The companion palette does have a yellow ochre color. And I'm still using the mini flow brush. When you do your cornucopia, this is part of the cornucopia lesson for week 9. You'd be nice to use big paper so you can get lots of different fruits and vegetables in there and flowers. Okay, so here's my orange or vermilion, and then yellowish red. I'm going to blend that up. Remember, this is a less absorbent paper, so the colors will not go all the way through right away. And I will be able to get that effect of dry brush look. And to encourage it, I'm just going to take a little bit of water out of my heel. Okay. Again, we start out with an upright stroke. And then I'm going to turn my brush up and down, turn my brush. There. And you can see here how when I drag my brush, I got these little hairs coming off, and that's exactly what I wanted, that artistic effect of the dry brush that I got in my composition that I showed you in the beginning. Okay, so now we have a big, huge spot here. We don't need all of that. So I'm going to reload my brush again. Blend it and do a side stroke. But leave some space for those leaves. And I don't have to leave as much because we have dry paper, right? Okay, and I'm pressing into the paper so that it will get absorbed and not create a line between the two strokes. There we go. Okay. Again, back to my other brush for the green. I'm going to load it with the darker green. And maybe a little bit of ink. And I could use wetter, a more dilute color here because the paper is not that absorbent, right? And it won't bleed too much. And dipping it in a little bit of ink, blending it on my dish. And keeping my strokes a little bit more narrow here. And doing maybe a little bit of stem. Okay. And when and then this time you don't have to wait until it dries to fill in some spots. You can just go right there with your wet brush because the colors are going to behave. And that can also be considered like a highlight. You can see my persimmon here. It's picking up the light of the lamp above me. And if you want it to have a base in which it's sitting on, just come back over. But I wouldn't want to get rid of too many of these nice brush strokes here, but just to show you if that's what you want to do. Okay. Then let's load up to do a second one from a slightly different viewpoint and a little bit more yellow like the big one here. So yellow ochre and orange. This one is my regular flow brush. And as I said, it can be wetter. You can see dripping water here, and I don't have to worry about the bleediness. Okay. This time I'm going to have it facing flat, and you won't be able to see the leaves too much. Emphasize that oval, east to west shape. Upright brush. Press, turn my brush so that my bristles touching the paper are the tip. And if I bend it like this, I'll get less of that dry brush stroke look. And instead of twisting, I'll just kind of coax it along. There, and I said I would keep this to the side. So I'll come in with some colors and go keep this roundness. So a few almost vertical strokes to keep that roundness. In fact, I'm left-handed, so 1, 2. Don't want it to look like a pumpkin. Take my green brush and put the hint of the leaf there. Okay. And that's the persimmon. Now, Kibashi, as I said, painted his persimmons a little oddly sometimes, and this is one way he did it. He did just 2 horizontal brush strokes. So here I've loaded my brush again, and I'm going to show you how he did it. So 1 stroke here, a little bit curved, and then directly on top of that, he did another stroke. And then a stem with a fine line brush. Just a little stem. Right like that. Okay, thank you.